There is a loaf of bread in a museum in Naples. It was baked on the morning of August 24th, 79 AD. The baker scored it into 8 wedges before putting it in the oven. He never took it out. That afternoon, the sky turned black. By the next morning, the baker, his oven, and his entire city were buried under 6 meters of volcanic ash. The bread survived. So did the oven. So did the election posters on the wall outside his shop, advertisements for candidates in an election that would never be held. We know the names of the candidates. We know who endorsed them. We know a gladiator named Celadus was called the girl's idol in graffiti scratched into a wall nearby. We know all of this because the disaster that buried Pompeii also froze it. What killed them preserved them, and what was preserved is not a ruin. It is a city frozen in the middle of a Tuesday. By the end of this, we will understand what daily life looked like in a Roman city that no one expected to become famous. We will see how 25 hours of volcanic fury created the most complete archaeological time capsule on Earth. And we will learn why the plaster ghosts of Pompeii still have something to teach us about how civilizations end and what they leave behind. Pompeii in the summer of 79 AD was not a great city. It was not Rome, it was not Alexandria. It was a mid-sized trading town on the Bay of Naples, roughly 11,000 people living inside walls that had been built centuries earlier. No ancient historian considered it worth a chapter. No emperor made it a priority. It was the kind of place that exists in every empire, functional, unremarkable, and entirely forgettable. The irony is absolute. The most famous Roman city in the world was never important while it was alive. It became immortal only because it died at the right speed. It had an amphitheater that could seat 20,000, more than the entire population. It had public baths, a forum, temples to Jupiter and Apollo, a covered market, and at least 33 bakeries. It had over 150 thermopolia, fast food counters built into the walls of buildings. They served hot stews and wine to workers who did not have kitchens at home. It also had a problem it had been ignoring for 17 years. In 62 AD, a massive earthquake had torn through the city. Walls cracked, temples collapsed, the water system broke. 17 years later, when Vesuvius erupted, the city was still rebuilding. Scaffolding was still standing. Some temples were still unusable. Pompeii was a city mid-repair, mid-election, mid-life, interrupted by something no one saw coming. And no one saw it coming because no one knew Vesuvius was a volcano. The mountain had been quiet for so long that Romans built villas on its slopes. The soil was extraordinarily fertile. Volcanic soil always is. Vineyards climbed the hillsides. Sheep grazed on the upper meadows. A fresco found in a Pompeii house shows the mountain as a single green peak, not the shattered crater we see today. The people of Pompeii lived in the shadow of something they did not understand. The word volcano did not even exist yet. It would be named after Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, because of what happened next. Imagine a baker in the pre-dawn dark. His name is lost. His bread is not. He lights the wood-fired oven at the back of his shop on the Via dell'Abbondanza, the main commercial street. The dough has been rising since midnight. He shapes the loaves, scores them into wedges, and slides them into the heat. Through the open shop front, he can hear the city waking up. Cartwheels on stone, a dog barking, a neighbor shouting about the election. The walls outside his shop are covered in painted slogans. Vote for Gaius Julius Polybius. He brings good bread. The baker does not think about the mountain. No one does. It is just a mountain. If you think history is just a list of dates, you've been misled. Here is what actually dictates our fate. Not the events we prepare for, but the ones we do not recognize until it is too late. The people of Pompeii did not live in fear. They lived in ignorance, and the difference turned a Tuesday into an extinction. At approximately 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Vesuvius exploded. The eruption blew a column of superheated gas, rock, and ash 33 kilometers into the stratosphere, higher than commercial aircraft fly today. The energy released was 100,000 times the thermal output of the Hiroshima bomb. Within minutes, pumice stones began raining on Pompeii 5 miles to the southeast. They were fist-sized, porous, light enough to float on water but heavy enough to kill. They accumulated at a rate of 15 centimeters per hour. The noise was unlike anything anyone alive had ever heard. The sky went dark, not dusk dark, midnight dark, at 1 in the afternoon, and here is where the sociology begins. Roughly 80% of the population made a decision in those first hours, and made it correctly. They left. They grabbed coins, jewelry, house keys, and ran for the gates. The roads south clogged with people, carts, and animals. Those who ran lived, but not everyone left. And the reasons they stayed tell us more about Roman society than any temple. Some stayed to guard their property, because in Rome, property was identity. Some were enslaved and had no right to leave. Some were old or sick and no one carried them. Some believed the eruption would pass, the way the earthquake had passed a generation earlier. Every one of those reasons is a system. Ownership, slavery, age, denial. The volcano did not choose its victims. Roman society had already sorted them. By midnight, the weight of accumulated pumice began collapsing roofs. People who had sheltered indoors were crushed. The streets were buried under nearly 3 meters of volcanic debris. Moving through the city was now almost impossible. And then, at dawn on August 25, came the thing no one could survive. The eruption column, the 33-kilometer pillar of gas and ash, collapsed under its own weight. It fell back to earth and raced down the slopes of Vesuvius as a pyroclastic surge, a superheated cloud of gas, ash, and rock traveling at 160 kilometers per hour. Temperature, over 300 degrees Celsius. 6 surges hit Pompeii in succession. The first reached the city walls, the fourth breached them. The sixth buried everything. Death was instantaneous. The heat was so extreme that it boiled brain fluid and cracked skulls. Across the bay at Messinum, a 17-year-old boy watched the eruption column rise like a pine tree over the mountain. His name was Pliny the Younger. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, commander of the Roman fleet, launched rescue ships toward the coast. The elder Pliny never returned. He died at Stabiae, suffocated by volcanic gases while trying to evacuate survivors. Years later, the younger Pliny wrote 2 letters to the historian Tacitus describing what he had witnessed. Those letters are the only surviving eyewitness account of a major volcanic eruption from the ancient world. They are so precise that volcanologists named an entire category of eruption after him. Plinian, a teenager's letters to a historian, written from memory, became the foundation of an entire branch of earth science. It is the ancient equivalent of citizen journalism: one observer, one pen, and the discipline to write down what everyone else was too afraid to watch. The baker's oven was sealed under ash. His bread was still inside. The election posters were still on the wall. The dog chained in the courtyard of the house of the tragic poet died trying to pull free. Its body twisted, its collar still fastened. Everything stopped. Not slowly, like Angkor. Not over generations, like Rome. In 25 hours, Pompeii lay buried and forgotten for nearly 17 centuries. Roman looters tunneled in shortly after the eruption to recover valuables, but within a generation the city's exact location was lost. Fields were planted over it. The name survived only in old maps and local memory. In 1748, systematic excavation began. What emerged was not rubble. It was a functioning city, interrupted mid-sentence, not the version of Rome that emperors wanted recorded, the version that actually existed. Cart ruts worn into stone streets, evidence of traffic patterns, frescoes still showing color, evidence of domestic taste, a brothel with explicit paintings and a price list, regulated commerce, documented in paint, a surgical kit with bronze instruments, dice, mirrors, a jar of fish sauce, the small, unglamorous inventory of daily Roman life that no historian bothered to write down because no historian thought it mattered. Election posters, over 2,700 of them, naming candidates, listing endorsers, making promises, a political system where bakers and fullers publicly endorsed candidates, democracy at street level. The graffiti alone rewrites our assumptions. Over 11,000 inscriptions have been cataloged. Love confessions, insults, philosophical quotes, business advertisements. One reads, "Successus the weaver loves the innkeeper's slave girl." Another complains, "O wall, I wonder you have not fallen," supporting so many scribblers. 11,000 inscriptions from a city of 11,000 people. That is not decoration. That is a literacy rate, a society where weavers and innkeepers and enslaved people could read and write, and did, on every available surface. The walls of Pompeii are the Roman internet, unfiltered, uncensored, and accidentally preserved. In 1863, the archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli made a discovery that changed how the world understood Pompeii. He noticed hollow cavities in the hardened ash, spaces where human bodies had decomposed over centuries, leaving perfect voids in the volcanic matrix. He poured liquid plaster into the cavities. What emerged were casts of the dead in their final positions, not skeletons, not abstractions, people. A mother shielding her child, a man covering his face with his hands, two people clasping each other, a dog arching its back against its chain, legs extended in a final pull for freedom. The plaster captured not just posture but texture, folds of clothing, the weave of a sandal strap, the expression on a face at the moment of death. What killed them preserved them. The ash that ended their lives also recorded them, more accurately than any portrait, any biography, any written history. We know exactly how these people died because the thing that killed them was also the thing that could not let them go. But here is the counterweight. The romantic image of Pompeii as a frozen moment is partly misleading. The city was not frozen at its peak. It was frozen mid-crisis. The earthquake of 62 AD had devastated Pompeii's infrastructure. Many public buildings were still damaged or under repair. The economy had been disrupted. Some wealthy families had already left. The Pompeii that Vesuvius buried was not a city at its best. It was a city coping. Many of the final moments captured in the plaster casts reflect not ordinary life, but panic, injury, and exhaustion. What we see is not a city living, it is a city dying. The difference matters. Today, Pompeii is one of the most visited archaeological sites in the world, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, receiving over 3 million visitors a year. But only about 2/3 of the city has been excavated. The rest remains deliberately buried. Modern archaeologists argue that leaving sections underground protects them better than exposing them to rain, sunlight, tourists, and air pollution. The same logic applies to the 300 million people who live within range of active volcanoes today. Vesuvius has not erupted since 1944. 3 million people live in its shadow right now. In the greater Naples metropolitan area, the mountain is still active. The magma chamber is still pressurized. The evacuation plan covers 72 hours. Pompeii's residents had 25. What killed them preserved them. But nothing preserves the living, except the memory of what happened to those who stayed too long. The baker's bread is still in the museum. 8 wedges, scored by hand. Never served. The oven where he baked it has been excavated. The shop has been mapped. The campaign slogans on the facade have been translated and cataloged. We know the names of the candidates he was supposed to vote for. We know everything about his last morning except his name. It is the most ordinary object in the world, and the most extraordinary, because it proves that on the morning of August 24th, 79 AD, someone woke up, lit an oven, and made bread for a city that would not exist by sunset. This is Strata. When you look at Pompeii, do you see a tragedy or a time capsule? Tell us in the comments. We'll see you in the next era.